In this video, I will lead you through the steps for building your first pivot table. The results won't be very fancy, but you will see how easy it is to get useful information very quickly. I will use the data set that was presented in an earlier video, the one you see here. Each row represents a purchase by a customer from a fictional online retail store. The purchases start in March 2014 and extend through early October of the same year. The dataset is of moderate size, with 4,000 records. It is set up perfectly for pivot tables, with a number of categorical fields on the left and several numeric fields on the right. The company might want to break down any of these numeric fields by any of the categorical fields, such as total spent, by customer region, and/or by purchase time. To start, I will select any cell in the data range and then click the Pivot Table button on the Insert ribbon. This opens the dialog box you see here, where you must choose the data source and the location for the pivot table. The data source options are an Excel range or an external data source. I will discuss external sources in a later video. For now, the correct choice is an Excel range. In fact, Excel guesses at the correct range, and if the active cell is within the data range, as it is here, the guess is usually correct. Of course, you can change Excel's guess if necessary. Note that this range should include the labels in the top row of the dataset. As for location, you can place the pivot table on an existing worksheet starting in a designated cell, but you will often elect to place it on a new worksheet, as I will do here. To create the pivot table, I will accept these default choices and click OK. This opens a new worksheet, which you can rename and move if you like. Excel places the new worksheet to the left of the datasheet. I think most people would rather have it to the right of the datasheet, so that's what I have done here. This worksheet contains a blank pivot table on the left and a pivot table fields pane on the right. The fields pane is crucial, so the first thing you should realize is that if it disappears, it is easy to restore. Currently, the active cell is A3, and because it is inside the pivot table, the fields pane is visible. But if I select a cell outside the pivot table, the fields pane will disappear. To get it back, all I need to do is select a cell inside the pivot table. You might have also noticed that when a cell in the pivot table is active, two Pivot Table Tools tabs are visible, the Options and Design tabs. If you switch to Excel 2013, you will find that the Options tab has been renamed as Analyze. The ribbons associated with these two tabs contain many useful pivot table options, and most of them will be discussed in later videos. Like the Pivot Tables field pane, these tabs disappear when the active cell is not within the pivot table. The Pivot Table Fields pane lists all data fields at the top, and it shows four areas at the bottom: Report Filter, Row Labels, Column Labels, and Values. Generally, you place categorical fields in the Row Labels, Column Labels, or Report Filter areas, and you place numeric fields that you want to summarize in the Values area. To start, I will check Customer Region and Total Spent in the Fields list. The categorical customer region field automatically goes to the row labels area, and the total spent field automatically goes to the values area, where it is summarized by summing. You can see the results in the pivot table. For example, the total spent for all purchases in the West is slightly more than $384,000. And the total spent in all purchases in all regions is slightly more than $2.6 million. As this example illustrates, when you check fields in the fields list, Categorical fields automatically go to the row labels area, and numeric fields automatically go to the values area. However, there are other ways to get fields to the areas where you want them. First, you can check a field and then drag it to the area you want. I will check customer gender and then drag it to the column labels area. Alternatively, I will uncheck this field and then drag it directly to the column labels area. This is the way I prefer to do it, and you probably will too. Either of these methods leads to the pivot table where sum of total spent is broken down by region and gender. For example, the total spent from all male customers in the Midwest is about $230,000. You now have a pivot table with useful results, but this is just the start. Later videos will illustrate how you can modify this pivot table in a variety of ways.